This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is why the Nkuhuma Pride is such a firm favourite.
It's Kinky Tail.
He just looks ready for a fight. This is still her territory.
The Avoca boys are here to stay.
How insane was that?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to what used to be referred to as the migration control. And it's marvellous to be back here on my swing once again. It is, of course, Safari Live's episode number 31, if you can believe it. My name is James Henry, and you can please talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Now, because it is Safari Live's, we are going to have a focus on characters. My character this week is going to be the Sausage Tree Pride. We're going to look at them in a little bit of detail, try and identify the females, chat a little bit about their history, and of course any memories you have of them or any contributions you have as to what you think is going to happen in their lives. Please send them through using that hashtag Safari Live. It is not only going to be me sitting on a swing. Oh no, we have got Pat and Tristan and Jamie down in South Africa. And they're going to be looking at Kuchava and Horsana and Corky the hyena and the male and female lions of the Nkuhumas and the Avocas. So lots to look forward to over the course of the next 2 hours for the episode 31 of Safari Lives. For now, let's take a look at where it all happened.
Up in the Mara, the sausages continue to revel in the gorgeous piece of real estate that they call home, while the new Olololo Pride cubs are a daily delight. Lastly, there's a new den site for the Olololo hyena clan, not far from where the lion cubs are secreted.
So that's where it all took place, and that's what we're going to discuss over the course of the next 2 hours. This is our map over here. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail during the course of the show. This is currently where the Sausage Tree Pride resides. When we first met them, they'd hardly split from the Awinos, and they lived up around this area here. So you can see there's been a big shift, but that's okay. That's pretty normal. We'll get into that a little bit later. And just to give you a little bit of reference, our 3 cars, if you can call them that, are parked up here. We're sitting right up here on the Olololo escarpment, and we have the world's greatest view. Okay, so that's what's going to happen today. We will be discussing the Sausage Tree Pride in enormous detail from the Migration Control Room. While I think about what to start off with on the Sausage Tree Pride, let's go across to Jamie Patterson in the hot, sweltering summer of Juma.
Lots to talk about when it comes to the Sausage Tree Pride. Us here on Juma, well, we've got lots to tell you as well. A very good afternoon to you all, and welcome to this afternoon's 31st episode of Safari Lives. My name is Jamie. This afternoon, Craig is on camera with me, and we are sitting very briefly at Twin Dams for a couple of reasons. One is because I'm just doing a quick check around for a leopard. That is not just because I'm guessing that a leopard might be here. It is because there are very fresh tracks heading in this direction. Now, as you know, Safari Lives are character-based. And this afternoon, Tristan's going to be chatting a bit about one or both of our male leopards that we see regularly. So the tracks are for a male leopard, so I've called him into this area to come and double-check under each and every single tree. And we know that he will be under a tree or in a tree because it is blisteringly hot once again. It is 34 degrees centigrade, 93 if you work in Fahrenheit. Not quite as hot as it's been over the last few days. I, on the other hand, am heading towards lions. I know where they are. I know exactly where they are. Or at least I know exactly where they were. Hopefully that in these temperatures means I know exactly where they are as well. That Egyptian goose looks very relaxed considering a leopard, well, that I suspect a leopard somewhere around here. I don't see him. They are, of course, masters of camouflage. Leopards, that is, not Egyptian geese. Egyptian geese are not masters of camouflage, and even if they were, they would definitely give themselves away by their sheer inability to keep quiet for more than 5 minutes at a time. Nope, no leopards round here. I'm going to duck through the dip of the Mulwati River. Well, it's not a river, it is a dried riverbed. I'm going to go through there and I'm going to see whether or not we have any luck. So while I do that, James has mentioned that he's been giving it some thought as to what he should discuss first. Let's go and see what he has to say about the Sausage Tree Pride.
Well, let's hope that my thought turns into something worthwhile. Now, as I said, when we first met the Sausage Tree Pride, they had probably just split from the Awinos, but as far as we were concerned, they were one pride. And they split possibly because they were getting too big. It wasn't a huge pride. It was only been about 8 females at that stage, plus the youngsters. Anyway, what did happen is that they did split. When we met them, they were the same pride, and so for this first clip that we're going to show you, consider them the same pride. They were probably in the process of splitting. We didn't often see them together. Right, let's see what happens. Bungay, are you ready? Bungay is on camera, by the way. There we are. It was his birthday yesterday. He's turned 33. Much older than any of these lions. So there they are, and obviously quite difficult to identify them all, and they used to occur, as I said, way up to the north. There's a bit of a wound on that lioness there, and it wasn't until sort of quite late in the day, I think, or late in our exploration of the Mara that we identified Kinky Tail. Now, this is traditionally Owino Pride territory where these chaps are now, just below Angama, just below our camp. And so that's what's happening in this particular clip. I am talking rubbish. Hang on a second. Sorry about this, everybody. I may have loaded the wrong clip. I think I did. No, I didn't. We were all right. Never mind. Let's keep going. You see how I didn't swear there? I've got quite good at that. Anyway, here we are. And it was, as I said, 8 lionesses and then the youngsters, the 3 youngsters. Remember also the very pale cub that existed in the Owino Pride, or that existed, there she is, that existed in the Sausage Tree Pride, but we were calling the Sausage Tree Pride at the time. Muddy nose, very nice, eating lots of buffalo. It's just like the Owinos and the sausages eat buffalo outside of migration time. Otherwise, they are wildebeest specialists like everyone else here. And I'm not entirely sure who that male was, but I don't think it was Kipuli. That was long before Kipuli arrived. That's just a little bit of them chasing buffalo in the night time. And what I wanted to do is just show you there. Let's just pause there. Let me go back. If you look up to the top right-hand side of the screen. Sorry, everybody. Just go back there. Push a play. And what you can see is the lights of where we are now, actually. So they are a long way north of where they currently live. And I think they are currently in some of the most beautiful real estate in the world. So buffalo hunting they were then, buffalo hunting they are now. Then there was a lovely bit of interaction yesterday that we had with the pride between elephants and the Sausage Tree Pride. And if you were watching, you would have seen that the elephants reacted completely differently from the way that they're reacting here. Here, they are aggregating, if you like, and then chasing off the lions, which they didn't do yesterday. They ran away. Now this was a spectacular sighting that I remember very well narrating, and I remember it calling it the Sausage Tree Pride. It took place just below Maasai Mara now, and if we push play, it was a wonderful hunt. There she goes. She grabs a young wildebeest. There we are. Now, that is almost certainly a current Owino lioness who used to be part of the Sausage Tree Pride. So they're very closely related pride of lions. And there is the pale cub, who I think is no longer. We spoke about her extensively during the Gauntlet series as being an ex-member of the Owino Pride. Okay. So that's a bit of the history. That's when we first started learning about what was going on here in the Maasai Mara with the lions. The flux And the change in the lion dynamics here continue to be quite astounding, especially when the migration comes into town. They come in, they create the migration comes in, it creates a huge melee of activity, and when everything settles down and the dust settles, what you find is that the territories often have shifted. We've learnt that. The same does not apply to the Nkuhuma Pride, for example, who have had the same kind of territory, the same space that they've operated in for many, many, many years indeed. So that is the case with the Sausage Tree Pride. Remember, send any of your questions you'd like to the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Do we still have communications with the final control room in Johannesburg? No? Heard nothing myself. Oh, there she is. Thank goodness. Right, Rosalind, you want to know how we can tell each lion apart. Let me try and show you. I'm not going to do it here, I'm going to do it on the wall. I'm going to ask Bungay to go handheld. There we go, very smooth, isn't he? Yes, not too bad for a 33-year-old man. All right, so we're at the map here. These are the five lionesses, of the Sausage Tree Pride. Now, I must confess immediately that I'm not good at identifying lionesses from each other. We do have a few members of staff who are pretty good at it. Nikki is very good at it. Kinky Tail is very obvious because she has everybody together. That's it, Kinky Tail. Then the mother of the youngest cub in the pride currently used to be known as Limpy Lou because she had a limp, but that limp is now healed. Her identifying feature are those yellow eyes. Her eyes are very yellow and her ears are entirely intact, as you can see there. So she's easy to identify. Then we've got a lioness with a dot in her eye. You can see that one there. Now, obviously, unless you get very, very close indeed, you can't see that. But if you're lucky, you can. And then the other lioness that is the mother has got this very severe, I think this is her here, very severe nick in her ear. She's got the 5-month-old cubs. And she's also got very brown eyes, very darkish brown eyes. So that's how we identify those ones. This one we've called Meaty, the tree climber, but, you know, that's probably fairly random. I'm not sure that she always climbs trees or necessarily climbs trees more than the others. I couldn't tell you for sure. So that's how we identify the 5 lionesses of the Sausage Tree Pride. And it gets very difficult, of course, and you will notice this with the Nkuhumas. We knew that they were 5 lionesses and then they had their cubs, but now their cubs are all pretty much as big as the adults, and so it gets quite difficult to figure out who is who. And that's probably why we were a little confused between the Awinos and the Sausage Tree Pride initially. Okay, so that's how we identify these cats. Let's go back across to Tristan, who had a very special sighting this year with an unusual visitor of royal blood.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Rusty this afternoon. We are slowly heading eastwards and back towards kind of Cheetah and Torchwood and see what we can go and find on that side. As mentioned, my name is Tristan on camera. I've got Jean-Ray this afternoon. Jean-Ray, when was the last time you did a Safari Lives? This must be a first one for you. I think this is actually a first time Jean-Ray has done a Safari Lives in episode 31. So welcome, Jean-Ray, to Safari Lives. Glad that you could join us. And it's nice to have you aboard. So anyway, we are slowly heading east. I'm sure lots of you have been asking how I've been feeling. I'm feeling better a little bit today. It's still not 100% right, but I think it was something to do with ticks. I found a massive tick yesterday on the back of my leg, and as soon as I pulled that off last night, since then I've been slowly starting to get a little bit better, but still not 100%. But anyway, feeling as though we can tackle the world this afternoon, so it's nice that it's not too hot. But like I said, we are going to be heading towards the east, so we're going to go into Torchwood and then into Cheetah. And the reason why we're going to go into Cheetah is because we're going to try and see if we can find little Kuchava and see if there's any sign of her and her little cubs. And the reason why I want to find her is because, well, this week we had such a spectacular sighting with her as she looked for some food. We came across Kuchava towards the end of the week. Although happy to see the female leopard, we couldn't help but wonder where she had stashed her new spotty cubs. Not one to disappoint, she surprised not only us, but also a family of warthog, successfully nabbing a piglet. Although not much of a meal for a grown female leopard, Kuchava made the most of her snack. and her moment away from motherly duties. Well, wasn't that absolutely incredible? It really was an amazing sighting. The way that she hunted was really unlike kind of how leopards normally go about it. She hunted more like a wild dog / cheetah than she did a leopard, and she kind of just stormed in, and her chasing that warthog through, and I just wish it had been a little bit more open than when it was. If she had just chased slightly to the left, we would have had the most perfect kind of view of the whole process, but obviously just went behind that thicket, and we didn't actually see how the adult warthogs tried valiantly to defend that little piglet and try and kind of keep Kuchava at bay, and so eventually she ended up grabbing it. But I'm glad she did get a meal, because obviously she does have cubs, so she is reported to have 2 cubs. They've only ever been seen once, as far as I can kind of gather. I've been asking around about them, and no one is sure where she's currently keeping them. But this week she's been seen between the various guides in the area. She's been seen, I think, 4 times now, on Chitwa, and kind of going from sort of Chitwa hangar and lodge, and then moving, and some of the time she goes past where we kind of don't have much signal, but you know, we've just been kind of keeping an ear out, and so I wonder if those cubs haven't been moved somewhere onto Chitwa. And so I'm thinking that maybe it's a good idea just to check the east for her. Obviously not only her, but Tandi and Kolamba have also been hanging around this side, so it's going to be girls that will be this side, and Tingana was around yesterday evening on Torchwood. So lots of options in the east. It's why I want to be on Torchwood. Zephyr, you say so nice to see Kuchava last week. Indeed, she's such a beautiful cat. I thoroughly enjoy spending time with her. I find her to be very much like her mom, and because of her resemblance to Mvula, it always kind of gives me a little sort of pang of I don't know what the word would be. You kind of miss Mvula and what he used to bring. I thoroughly enjoyed that leopard and spent a lot of time with him. So nice to see her, and especially if she's got cubs and she's moving around on Chitwa, maybe that's a good kind of omen for us to be able to actually see the cubs fairly shortly, which would be spectacular. Right, we're going to carry on. We're going to see if we can find that. In the meantime, though, Jamie Patterson has wasted no time and has found one of the characters she was looking for.
Kuchava is definitely a leopard that I have a very soft spot for, even if I did only see her a couple of times. Speaking of soft spots, I'm sure that these big guys are just softies at heart. We've found 2 Avoca males sitting right on the eastern edge of Juma, and looking well and truly relaxed. The one over there is a little bit more skittish than his gentleman companion over here, who is quite content, but we're giving them a lot of extra room just because the first line looked a little bit uncomfortable as we drove in, so we've moved right back away from him. Looking hungry, but fiercely dominant, as you know, and of course, over the past week, the Avocas have continued to assert their dominance over both the land and the ladies. Feminine wiles are crucial when it comes to the negotiation of the peace process, as the Avoca male and the Nkahuma female continued side by side. With the remainder of the pride off to the north, the pair went on with their activities. As darkness descended, the 2 took an evening stroll under the moonlight. And it's clear that the Avoca males are here for the foreseeable future. Given the frequency of these mating moments, we're hoping that soon there will be cubs as an addition to the ever-growing Nkahuma pride. So there you have it. There is absolutely no doubt at this point that the Avocas are quite happily here to stay, which of course then means that we have the opportunities to get to know them a little bit better. Like this gentleman with his scarred face and nicked up ears, he has already had to fight for all sorts of things in his young life, although not apparently territory, or at least not very much. Most of those scratches and injuries on his face will most likely have come from scraps with the other members of his coalition over feeding rights and mating rights as well. Of course, what this means as well is that we will indeed be seeing Nkuhuma cubs, I would say, sometime in the next 4 months or so. I'm giving it a little bit of leeway, because of course the gestation period is 3 months, just because, as most of you know, the lionesses do go through a period of false oestruses when males first move into an area. The Avocas have been here for long enough that I feel as though that almost grace period. Doesn't he have beautiful eyes, this lion? Of course, he shut them as I said that. That grace period will soon be over, and we will be expecting an increase to the Nkuhuma ranks, which would be absolutely awesome. Hopefully this year is Amber Eyes' year. That was very surprisingly difficult to say. Now, Sea Cantrell, you want to know if his mane will grow onto his forehead. He will definitely fill out. What is astounding is just how much their manes have grown since they moved in here. But we'll get to that in a little bit. You want to know if it'll grow down over his forehead. It will start to cover those ever so slightly. What will actually happen is that the mane will get even longer and start to flop over those patches, which in young lions look a little bit like the telltale signs of balding. But that's not in fact the case. So yes, it will. The mane will grow in a little bit over there. Although some lions just have a more prominent mohawk than others. But I was saying that it's amazing how much they've developed and grown. They really have. And that's a sign of their dominance all on its own. The fact that they've come in and they've taken over an area has caused a massive spike in their testosterone levels, and they have grown so quickly. You see it in young lions that are moved into an area where there's no competition. And there's a lot of expansion or attempt at expansion and putting lions back into their natural old home ranges. In this case, that's obviously not the situation, because this is a massive open wild area where there's plenty of competition between male lions. But as soon as male lions become dominant, they go through this almost period of accelerated growth. The exact same thing happened to the Birmingham males. Their manes filled in much, much faster than I expected them to as a result of that. And darkening in color, of course, as well, is all part of that process. Okay, all right, so we've discussed the growth of manes on lions. Let's go across to James Hendry, sporting his mane. I don't know how to say that.
Unfortunately, the same growth is not going to apply to me. I have a receding rather than proceeding hairline. That lion you've just been watching has a proceeding hairline, which must be very nice. My brother also has a proceeding hairline, interestingly enough. Full head of hair, unlike me. Right, okay. I hope you all appreciate the fact that, I've gone without a hat today. It's very difficult for me to accept the onset of age. And apparently all of you are complimenting me on my pocket square. Very nice, yes. Remember, for those of you who did watch my first migration series, this started out as a shukka that Brent and I'm not sure, I think we wore them as a competition. I used mine as a pocket square and a tie. I used it to clean the window, and Brent wore his as a tablecloth, of course. The days of Brent Leo Smith and his shukkas. I'm hoping that we will have a redux of them at some stage this year. Okay, now we're going to look at the second clip of the Sausage Tree Pride. This takes us to this year. Very interesting dynamics that happened this year. Here we go. Are you ready, Mungo?
Yes.
There we go. Sausage Tree Pride, as usual, hunting buffalo. Now, if you look very carefully over here, you will notice that is not a lioness, but a young male. So a young male that has grown up in the pride, we obviously saw them in the previous clip, difficult to identify exactly which ones they were, but two young males in this pride, and over to the side, the great Kipuli. Now, Kipuli apparently means earring, so we're not entirely sure how he got the name given that he has a nose ring hole in his nose, but that's how it is. Anyway, Kipuli sounds quite nice, even though it is not entirely accurate. So here they are, waiting. There's the other young male, and that's Kipuli waiting with one of the ladies. And of course, there was quite a lot of mating that took place. Before we get to that, I just want to show you why he's called Kipuli. For those of you who don't know, you can there see a cut in his nose. All right? So there it is, and somebody mistranslated earring for nose ring, and that's why he's called Kipuli. So it looks like he had a nose ring there and it was perhaps pulled out. A tentative reason for giving him the name, but that's what it is. Okay, let's carry on. There he goes. He now took over this area, he took over the pride, and very interestingly, he made a coalition partner out of this young male and the other young male. That is very, very strange. It's very rare. We would have expected him to come into the area and chase away these two young males, and that just did not happen. We don't know where Kipuli came from. We are unsure as to whether or not he's had other prides in this area before, but regardless, he managed to come into this area, he managed to sort himself a pride, and he managed to sort himself some coalition partners at the same time. That's quite nice. There's all 5 lionesses and the man, Kipuli. Now, it was inevitable, of course, that with him there would be some mating. This is the tree-climbing lioness, and she is quite appropriately in a sausage tree, which was very nice, because this is the sausage tree pride. Like I say, it was inevitable that there should be some mating. So mating there was, and that was the result. We think that was the youngest lioness who gave birth to her first cub, a very pale little thing, beautiful little creature, that unfortunately, after 2 or 3 sightings, disappeared. We don't know what happened, and obviously we know from watching this show that lions have a very small chance of reaching territorial adulthood. Look at that. I mean, that is just pricelessly adorable. One of those lionesses is Kipuli, Kinky Tail, giving love to a niece or nephew. We don't know if it was a niece or nephew. Look. And quite pale. Very interestingly, quite pale, much like that pale lioness of the Awinos, who unfortunately also disappeared this time, or I don't know when it was actually, somewhere around this time last year. And I know you're all feeling sad for this little cub, and I know it is. I mean, look at that. If you weren't feeling sad before, you certainly will be now. I feel dreadfully sad when these things happen, because they happen, but they happen so often. And the amount of tragedy going on out in the wilderness is a constant source of heart sore for me, and I'm sure for many of you. He's hardly got his little milk teeth yet. No, is that the end? Oh, that's the end of the clip. All right, so that was the end of the clip. Now, that little cub died. Then there was more mating. Those young males mated with the pride. They mated with various females, almost certainly related to them, either aunts or possibly even mothers or maybe sisters. We don't know if any of those matings were successful. Kipuli was doing a lot of mating as well. We do know that Kinky Tail gave birth and then lost a cub. We'll get onto that a little bit later in the next clip. Anyway, those males are no longer with the pride, and again, we'll discuss that when we get to the next clip that we get to. Good, okay. Well, that's all I have to say about that clip. Perhaps we should have a quick look out the window and see if we can see anything spectacular going on down there. No, we cannot. Now, making his voiceover debut today is Patrick Fitzgerald, and so we're going to hand you over to him now.
Voiceover debut? I made that last week. Come on, Hendry. Jeez. My name is Patrick. I have Senzo joining me on camera, and this is the 31st Safari Live SSS. So I am looking for Hosanna right now. He was last seen on quarantine about 1 o'clock, so not too long ago, and it is a pretty hot day, so he can't have gone too far. We did check it down at the pan, and there was some impala alarm shouting at something. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I had a look around in the bushes. I was sure it was Hyena, but there was nothing to be seen there. We do have a couple of other stations following up on that though, so if I hear anything, I will be straight on down. Now remember, this is completely live, completely interactive. Use that hashtag Safari Live on Twitter to talk to us, or the YouTube chat stream. Now, I don't have Hyena just yet, but last week I did have a very cool sighting involving him and our matriarch of the Juma clan. Taking a break from the stress of moving dens, Corky took some much-deserved me time in one of the many puddles courtesy of the recent rains. As Corky cooled down, she seemed oblivious to the curious little chief. Taking into account his experience with hyenas, Hyena's approach was cautious, but he couldn't seem to quell his childlike curiosity. Annoyed by the interruption, Corky had little time to pay any attention to Hyena and quickly chased him off, with his tail between his legs. Well, what a interesting sighting that was. That was exactly this time last week, and we do know our little chief does love the limelight. He does love it being in front of the camera, so I'm sure we're going to see that spotted face of him sometime within the next hour and a half or so. I am confident. Oh, and there is a track right there, and it is an old track, so I shall disregard that track. MGN, yes, that swim looked very refreshing for Corky. Very, very refreshing indeed. I was sweating my... I'm not going to finish that sentence. I was sweating a lot and really wanting a swim, unfortunately. Okay, well, in the meantime, let's go across to Miss Jamie Patterson. Mrs. No,
Alrighty, well, I think we'll all agree on an afternoon like this afternoon that a dip just like the one Corky had sounds highly appealing, although perhaps maybe in some slightly cleaner water. Right, well, our lions are not planning on being up to terribly much. I might leave them for a little bit in a moment and then come back towards the end of this episode of Safari Lives so that we can possibly catch them as they're up and moving about. Maritza wants to know what would happen if the Birmingham males were to show up now. It's an interesting one. I suspect there would be a lot of roaring and a lot of toing and froing because the Birmingham boys, look, I don't think that they're going to come back. Let's put it that way. I think their territory that they established was just simply too large for them to maintain. And, nice elephant dung pillow there. Well, no, maybe not so nice. Not orthopod approved at all. I don't think they're going to come back, but if they did, it remains questionable whether or not they would actually still consider this their territory or if they'd be a bit nervous or scared. If they came in all three together, roaring their heads off, then it would be a direct challenge to the Avocas. And the Avocas probably wouldn't, I think, at this stage, back down. I think that they would stand their ground. There could potentially be a very serious fight. If they caught one of the Avocas on their own, then they would do some damage if it was 3 against 1, and vice versa, actually, if the Birmingham males. But the truth is that the 3 Birmingham males are a little bit bigger and stronger and a little bit more experienced, but it's not worth it for them. To try and maintain a massive territory at the risk of such injury when they've already got an established territory, I don't think it's likely. If the Birmingham males were to come back when the Nkuhumas had cubs, then unfortunately that would be very serious indeed for the Nkuhumas. So it's really just a question of, well, how they came back, what sort of manner we're talking about, if they came back as challengers or not. I don't think that they would. Unfortunately, it does seem as though the Birminghams are down to 3. And 4 more hasn't been seen in months and months. So it seems likely, but we can't confirm that with certainty. And obviously, since they haven't spent any time with us, we've got no idea exactly what happened to him. Whether it was other male lions or perhaps an injury from hunting something large like a buffalo or giraffe, we just don't know. It would be the first real challenge that the Avocas have faced since they arrived here, so it would be interesting to see how it played out. It would also be very traumatic for everyone involved, most importantly for the females of this area, for both the Styx Pride, the Torchwood, the Talamatis, and the Nkuhumus. That is odd. I was listening to half of James Richard's question, but I didn't get the other half. I don't quite know why. It was definitely something about male lions and their testosterone. All right. Well, for now, James Richard, hold on. Don't go anywhere. I'm sure I will hear the rest of your question in a moment. But I've got a sneaking suspicion that I have lost the final control at Johannesburg almost completely. So for now, we will continue to watch our sleepy lions dozing in the shade, quite contentedly. I think when they do move tonight, their first stop will probably to go for a drink, which would mean the Chitwa water, not the big Chitwa dam, but there's a little pan, just probably about 500 or so yards south. Oh, hello, Kirst. Lovely to hear your voice. She has returned to us. That is marvelous. Right. You seem to be back up and running. Oof. James Richard, okay, I finally got your question, and after all that, with the great build-up to James's question, I don't have the answer to that. James's question was, do I think that I mentioned the raise in the testosterone levels when male lions come into an area and establish themselves in a territory? Do I think that the fact that they haven't had to fight will have an effect on their testosterone levels? I don't know, I'm afraid. I would guess not, actually, because I think it's got less to do with the actual fighting or the challenges. I think it's actually got more to do with being the. I don't know how it biologically.
Righty, everybody. That was an unfortunate crash cut. Sorry about that, but here I am. Interesting discussion there, James Richard, about the testosterone. I'm going to say I think it probably would increase testosterone levels. You'll find in fighting men, I think the continual conflict, the expectation of conflict and the need to get big and strong, for example, the need to get big and strong, the need to enforce your will and the threat of damage and of injury will definitely elevate testosterone levels in order to make you more aggressive, in order to help you to survive. So I'm going to say absolutely. The more fighting they do, the more testosterone is going to course through their bodies. Okay, this is a giraffe clip. No, it's not. I have not clicked on what I'm supposed to click on. All right, we're going to do our third and final sausage tree pride clip. This one is titled Kinky Tail. And there we go. There is Kinky Tail, and as we can see, she has all together now, kink in her tail. That's probably caused by a broken vertebra that has become arthritic, and so you can see that it's got quite a large sort of nodule on it, if you like. Good. There we go. I must confess also that in all these clips there seems to be an extensive concentration of flies on all of the lions here. She's definitely the oldest lioness in this pride, and we often talk about lionesses leading the pride. We talk about amber eyes leading the Nkuhumas. Often that's utter nonsense. They don't lead the pride. They just happen to be the oldest or the most recognizable members of those prides. So if there's an equivalent to amber eyes in the Mara, well, that's Kinky Tail. That's a lovely shot. Isn't that beautiful? It was Gendry or Manu, I think. Now, they obviously have had tremendous amounts of conflict with hyenas. They currently, I'm actually not sure which hyena territory they fall into at the moment, because they are so far south. But they would have met and had spent an extensive period with the North clan when they were further up here, and also, of course, the Olololo clan. Now, we have got this young male here. This is before he left with Kipuli. And as I said, these young males mated with the lionesses of the Sausage Tree Pride. And as I made mention yesterday, there's Kipuli. He is also seeking out Kinky Tail for the purposes of mating. And there we have some new cubs. Now, I think that those were the cubs. I'm afraid I'm slightly confused here as to whether or not those were the cubs that Kinky Tail lost. Anyway, when I think about that, Monique, I don't think that Kinky Tail hurts her in the slightest. No, I don't think it does. I think it probably did hurt tremendously when it happened, but right now I don't think it hurts her in the slightest. Right, so we had the situation where Kipuli and the other youngsters mated with the females in the Sausage Tree Pride, including Kinky Tail. She gave birth. She lost those cubs. She's now pregnant again. Okay, we think she's about to give birth again. But what is very interesting is that this bunch now, these 3 cubs, the current crop of Sausage Tree cubs, we do not know who their fathers are. 3 males. This one, the little one here, now 4 months old, and these 2 round about 5 months old. These are approximate ages. And we do not know who their father is. It is quite possibly the Oldonyo Pikes, but also quite possibly Kipuli, because Kipuli departed the area plus minus 4 or 5 months ago. So it is, not 4 or 5 months ago, in fact, prior to that, so probably when the lionesses were still pregnant. Isn't that just gorgeous? And so I think one of the most interesting things about this whole situation is the fact that the Oldonyo Pike males, who now dominate over the Sausage Tree Pride, could easily be raising cubs that are not their own. Now, I've said that a few times, but I find it completely fascinating, because if that is the case, it goes against all known textbook lion behavior. And it begs the question as to how lions know their paternity and how any animal knows their paternity. We know that, for example, leopards, let me just, while it carries on, I'll keep talking. We know that leopardesses will go outside their territories to mate with strange males, and that often cuckolds the resident male, so he will protect a youngster or a cub that is not his own. We're often asked, do we think that fathers can smell their offspring? Do they have a familiar smell? I've often said yes, I think they probably can, but I'm not sure. And so there are a lot of questions around these 3 little cubs here, who their father is. It's quite possible that the single one has a different father from the others. It could be any of the 3 lions that left, Kipuli or the 2 youngsters, or 1 or 2 of the Oldonyo Pike males. So that's the story as it is right now with the Sausage Tree Pride. And as we mentioned last night, if you were watching the show, the TV show, of course we do have a situation where we've got Kinky Tail pregnant. We're pretty sure one of the other lionesses has given birth, and quite likely that the one lioness who has not given birth, we don't think yet, is also pregnant. So there could be a lot of youngsters in the Sausage Tree Pride fairly soon. Becky, I don't know if they grieve for their cubs. It's one of the most commonly asked questions. Do animals grieve? And I think the reason everyone asks this question is because we feel a sense of attachment. We want to identify with the animals that we watch much of the time. I know that we try and be cold, hard scientists about it some of the time, but we want to identify with them. I always go back to this particular argument around grief. Is there an evolutionary point for grief? What is the purpose of grief? Why would any animal feel grief? What possible benefit could it have to them? And the answer to me is that the potential for grief creates a parental response, a caring response. And I've watched giraffe almost certainly mourning over a youngster that was dead. She protected it from a male leopard for 3 days before he eventually took it away. This is the carcass of her youngster. We've obviously seen elephants seemingly mourning over their youngsters or over dead members of their herds. So I believe that they do. I'm sure that there is an element of grief. I don't know what that means for a lion. I don't know if it means that they feel depressed. We know dogs feel depressed, or we certainly think that dogs feel depressed when something happens. I had a dog once, had 2 dogs. When the one died, the other one was never the same. There's just no question. Its character changed irrevocably, and it was a miserable animal until eventually he died as well. So, yes, I think they do feel grief. I think that grief is something that, an overhang almost of parental care, and its function is to draw a mother or members of a group to each other so that they try and avoid that feeling of grief. It's a form of care, I suppose. So I'm going to say yes, I do think they can. I have no scientific evidence for anything I've just said to you. It's entirely off the top of my head. Okay, so those are the 3 Sausage Tree Pride clips that we had. I hope you're slightly more familiar with them. I'm going to now think about where else I can hang from in this room while you go back to Tristan, Tandy and Tlalamba.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't actually hear any of that link. Our comms are breaking up horrendously this afternoon. But anyway, doesn't matter. You're back with us, and we're busy scratching around, still trying to see any signs of Tandy, Tlalamba, Kuchava. Nothing as yet. I haven't found any signs of any tracks, but we're in the right areas. This is exactly where we saw Kuchava earlier, well, when she hunted that warthog. This is where we first found her, kind of walking up. It's also an area where Tandy and Tlalamba have been spending some time, and kind of last week we got to spend a bit of time with the 2 of them as they argued over a carcass. Although Tlalamba is growing at a rapid pace, Tandy continues to teach her adequate table manners. The mother-daughter duo enjoyed sharing the meal for a moment, before Tlalamba tried out the waters once more with a little game of tug-of-war. At just over a year old, the princess continues to test the boundaries, but Tandy remains resilient, keeping the cub in her place. As Tlalamba grows, the dynamics within this leopard dynasty will continue to shift. For now, Tlalamba knows better than to risk her mother's wrath. Well, wasn't that cool? I thoroughly enjoyed that afternoon spending time with those 2, and it was amazing to watch little Tlalamba try and pull the carcass out of Tandy's mouth and then pull Tandy with her, and then you could see just how much stronger Tandy actually is when she eventually decided, enough is enough. I'm going to put my foot down here, and she pulled back and then dragged little Tlalamba with her. So it was very cool sighting. I thoroughly enjoyed spending the afternoon with them. They were just naughty that they went into Torchwood just as we started our TV show, so it wasn't very nice of them, but it was okay. We still had a really nice sighting, and I'm glad that we did, and that's why we are in this area. It's exactly where she's kind of been spending some time. Like I said, Tlalamba's been spending some time here, and so it's a really good place to check around them. The Muluwanini runs on our right-hand side, and there's a few little kind of wallows or muddy pans that have got water in them and shade, and so it's the perfect place for little Tlalamba to stick around while she kind of waits for no, I'm just listening. No, it's just the tracks for a leopard that Jamie was following, that we know already go all the way to the southern boundary. But there's a perfect place for Tlalamba to sit and wait for Tundi, but also to be able to explore and to be able to hunt and to be able to find water and shade and be able to hide out from danger. So it really is a good place for them to hang around quite a bit. Now there's tracks, there we go, there's tracks for a leopard, but are these fresh tracks or are these yesterday's tracks? Because this is a very similar place that I had tracks yesterday. These are yesterday's tracks that we've got here. I've driven all over them, which is not ideal. So those are not the tracks that we are looking for at this stage. We are looking for much better ones. So these are the ones that, like I say, yesterday were moving up and down in this area. Now, I think I got Bee Parks. I think that was the name. It's so difficult because, sorry, you're breaking up badly. But anyway, there's not a leopard, but a leopard tortoise. Is Tingana's territory diminishing? This is an interesting question. Jamie and I have been discussing this for the last week, and we have not, neither of us have heard Tingana calling at all in the past probably 2 weeks. I can't remember actually the last time I heard Tingana making a saw. So, which is interesting in many respects. It's a funny kind of change because he normally is very good about going around and sawing regularly. The other thing is that he seems to be spending a lot of time kind of Buffelshoek, Torchwood, and in areas outside of his normal range, which is quite strange. And as we've seen him moving once again, so we're now starting to see Hukamuri coming back into Juma as well. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's a female that he's busy kind of tracking down and looking for. Now you can see the camouflage that these tortoises have when they get into a thicket. So that little tortoise has gone into the base of that tree on the right, Jandre, where the kind of tree falls over, straight in there at the bottom. That was where it was. The shell should be somewhere. There we go. There's the shell. So you can see why it has those mottled kind of markings. It really does help to be able to camouflage really nicely and to be able to not attract too much attention in the form of predators like hyenas and honey badgers and all the various other things that goes after them. Also in the hot weather like this, after it's just had a little drink in that mud wallow, it's now going to make its way into a bit of shade where it will then not lose moisture nearly as much. But it is interesting with Tingana, and obviously we need him to stay around a little bit longer. I don't think Hosanna is ready yet to defend a territory and to try and kind of keep Hukamuri at bay, and so we need Tingana just to step up for probably, I would say, another year, and that'll allow Hosanna to get to a point where he would be able to potentially, there's a nice bird of prey, Andre, he would potentially be able to go after that territory and take it off on his own and keep Hukamuri at bay. So hopefully Tingana comes back and starts shouting the odds and still kind of carries on marking his territory, but at this stage his territory has maybe not kind of got smaller, but it's definitely not grown in any way, and he's not moving in areas that he liked to move. We don't see him much on Cheetah, not much on Little Gari anymore, mostly more to the north. Now that bird over there that you're seeing flying away is an interesting one. It's a very young black-chested snake eagle. Now these guys are very common in the Mara, so James would see a lot of them up there, but here in South Africa, or in Juma particularly, we don't see too many of them. They typically like more open plains areas, so you see a lot of them in the central parts of the Sabi Sands around the southern part of Olololo and Singita in the west, but here not too many, and you can see that it's just going through its molts now to get its adult coloration. So the black-chested will get that very black head, and they'll get a white kind of chest and belly area, and then they'll have the dark brown wings and tail with those heavily barred kind of markings on the tail itself, and then those stovepipe legs that they get that are long and featherless. So nice bird to see, because often birds can be a bit tricky. This is a tricky one if you were to try and ask somebody to ID it, particularly from that angle there. It would be a tricky one to be able to kind of do. They look quite similar there to a couple other birds that you get out here. So European honey buzzard would be one that would be a bit tricky, and then also potentially the brown snake eagle. Sinak, you say really majestic when you see it flying. Indeed, it is very majestic. Jandre has done excellent work to be able to keep up with that as it flew straight towards us and over our head. And they are beautiful birds. Now, this particular one is calling quite a bit, so I wonder if it's maybe a recently kind of fledged individual, no longer relying on parents anymore, and so just kind of feeling a bit lonely in the world, making a few squawks every now and then. And you'll find it'll fly from basically dead tree to dead tree, and it will then land, and you can hear squirrels or alarm calling a little bit at it as it does a pass over. They see a shadow in the sky and they know that could potentially be dangerous, and so it's going to go to tree and try and kind of look out for any signs of food. And today's a great day for snakes. Lots of warm weather is the perfect conditions. Good. We're going to scratch around a little bit longer for Tandi, Tlalamba or Kuchava. In the meantime, back to Jamie, who's got her Avocas, and I'm sure they're having a very big nap.
All right, good luck, Trista. I hope you have more luck than you did yesterday evening. Shame didn't work out exactly according to plan. So we are still with our lovely but very sleepy lions. I don't even know if I actually managed to finish off James's answer or not. We were talking about testosterone levels, and I don't know if we got any further than that. I'm not sure exactly where you lost me, thanks to the attack of the gremlins. But hopefully you managed to get the gist of the answer, which was basically, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think it would make that much of a difference. Ah, there we go. Okay, awesome. Now, I mean, there's a very big difference between the Avocas when they came in about a year ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, but when they came in here and were then chased away post-haste by the Birminghams very briefly. The Birminghams made a quick return to the north, chased them away, and then went off south again. There's a big difference between the lions from a year ago and the Avocas that we see today. David, you want to know where we are on Juma? We are right on the eastern boundary, about 200 or so yards from the southern boundary. So we're in the southeastern corner, very, very close to the boundary with Cheetah, and of course their waterhole, their massive dam. The sticks apparently are not far from us. They're on the Cheetah airstrip. And the Nkuhumas, no one's actually quite sure. Yesterday, apparently, they were on Mala, which took us all by surprise, because the last time we saw them, they looked as though they were making their way towards Simbabili. So that took us by surprise. I'm not sure where they are today. We usually try and keep track of the movement of the animals, even if they're not on Juma or Torchwood or Cheetah. We try and keep track by talking to the guides around this area, and they help to give us a more rounded view of exactly what's happening within these animals' lives. Safari Wildman would like to know which, if any, of the prides around Juma, around the Juma area, might have the Mapocho or the Majingilan genes. Now, for those, let me just go a little bit back into history for those that don't know, because it might get a little bit confusing otherwise. We're talking about previous coalitions that actually, in the case of the Mapochos, were incredibly famous. They were renowned throughout the Sabi Sand and actually throughout the world, because at one point the Mapocho coalition numbered 6 male lions. They took over an enormous territory, which included Juma at one point, and actually a fair portion of the Sabi Sand itself. The Majingilans consisted of, when I actually first arrived here, there were still 4 of them left roaming around, but at that point they were starting to get a little bit long in the tooth. But the Majingilans were actually responsible for the death of some of the Mapochos. Okay, cool. I'll get back to you on that, because I haven't actually fully answered the question. The answer is quite a few lion prides, but I'll get back to that in a moment. Let's send you across to Tristan, who apparently has found some elephants.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, it's Fang. Hey, Fang. Now, I think Kirsty said that we're live, so I'm just going to talk in case we are. But we've got her herd, which is super, super cool. She's the one in front. You can just see her fang tusk coming back. And this is the first time I've seen her since May 2017. Can you believe it? I mean, it's a long, long time ago. And so I'm so happy that we managed to find her in the herd. They're just kind of milling about at a mud wallow. You can see they're covered in mud at the moment. And there's lots of tiny, tiny, tiny little babies that are with them at the moment. So super cool to see. I'm so glad we managed to find them. It would have been nice if she had appeared last week Sunday, because we chatted about her quite a bit in Safari Lives. We focused on Ellie's, and we talked a lot about Fang and her kind of her role and the kind of difficulty she went through on that day all that time ago. So cool to see. At first, when there's one female walk towards me, the one with the tiniest baby in the herd, she's got dead straight tusks, and we actually had her in the clip last week, and I was thinking to myself, she looks very, very familiar, and then realized it is indeed Fang's herd, as Fang kind of just ghosted behind her, which is very cool to see. But they are absolutely the coolest herd. I love this herd. Big, lots of them, relaxed. They are a special grouping, that's for sure. I'm just going to reposition those so we can get a better view of all of them, because they're kind of milling about feeding now after having a bit of a wallow. And I believe a lot of you are very excited to see Fang's herd. Now, the bad news is that Jamie's tracks that she had earlier, the guy has actually found Tingana crossing into Little Gowrie right now. Must have been so close to where Jamie was, but he's managed to unfortunately cross southwards, which is not great. But we have Fang, so that's cool. I'm happy. This is my afternoon maid. I'm just going to follow them around all day, because I absolutely love spending time with this group of elephants. I find them absolutely amazing, and they are so relaxed, this herd. I always enjoy spending time with them. Now I'm just going to go around. There's Tingana's tracks, actually, Talk of the Devil from yesterday. Just going to get towards this mound where it's going to be a little bit more open. We will be able to give Genre less of a hard time trying to actually film them. But here we go, there she comes. Hello, girl, you're looking so good. The last time I saw you was a long time ago. Where have you been? I'm not allowed to stay away for that long. There she comes. Now, it's actually funny enough, Genre was on the car that day when she had that miscarriage. You remember that, Genre? Yep. That was quite a special sighting, wasn't it? And look, she's coming right towards us. There's a little baby to the right of her as well. Tiny little one that is moving around on the right-hand side. There's the one with the little floppy ear. It's like meeting an old friend. Hello. Where have you been? You've been avoiding me, hmm? So cool to see her. Oh, she is the most magnificent female. She's absolutely massive for a female elephant, and I can promise you, when she was walking around the car that last time, it was so special, and to have her this close once again is amazing. So, Amelia, matriarchs, in terms of are they chosen or self-appointed? Hey, you, what are you doing so close? You and your little broken ear. So she's the one that's got the little ear issue. But generally with matriarchs, it's normally born into a lineage. So you normally have this matriarch that will have daughters that will eventually kind of take over as the next sort of matriarch, much like the hyenas. But there will be lots of splits within elephants. And so you'll find that the elephant herds get too big and a female might go away, and she'll become a sort of self-appointed matriarch of that grouping. And then from there, her daughters will just kind of assume the role itself. And so that's basically how it works. It's in some cases self-appointed, in other cases there's no real fight though for matriarch rights within these groupings. It's not nearly as kind of violent as what you would see sometimes from hyena takeovers, or as sort of aggressive. Generally, like I say, it's a lineage thing, and the Ellies kind of do that. And if there's a female that doesn't really want to be part of the herd, she'll break off and go and do her own thing. But so cool to see them. The nice thing is that while we are on Torchwood, they are moving in the right direction to start making their way towards Juma. And I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow afternoon, or during the course of tomorrow morning, late morning, we see this herd arriving at Gowrie Dam for a drink. She's often around when that dam's got water. We see Fang around quarantine regularly. and around the dam, and so I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see this herd coming through. It's so cool to see them again. There's the best kind of thing. If it wasn't for a leopard, this was going to be my best option after that. And you can see a tiny little baby there. There's two very small babies here that I would estimate that are only probably a few months old. They really aren't, they haven't been here on this world for very long. That little one that's walking there is probably closer to about 6 months, that one. But there's another tiny one that's walking around that is also very small. Look at that. It's trying to learn how to push the tree over like Mom does when she uses her feet, and the trunk's still not working all that well just yet, but eventually we'll figure it out. Isn't that cool? Hello, little one. Baby ellies are cute, aren't they? Especially when that little trunk goes and moves around, and you can see it's kind of smelling and tasting and trying to work out its world. And its skin too big for it at this stage. It needs to grow into the skin a little bit more. And the other little one is just to the left of this one. I don't know if you can see it, Chandra. It's just on your left hand side here, and she's obviously I don't know if it's a female or a male, but that's obviously the little one for the female that I recognize that's walking past her now with the straight tusks. That would be her little one, but that one's tiny. It's a very small baby, only a few months old, I would imagine, not even maybe a few weeks. You can still see a little wobbly as the rest of the herd moves. So, oh my, can Fang hurt herself with the tusk? I mean, I suppose there is a possibility that she might hurt herself, given that the tusk is growing constantly and she's not really using it very much, and so that rate of growth could grow back towards her and into her sort of chest or into her leg or something like that. But if that were to take place, I would imagine Fang would constantly try and rub it and try and work it and try and shorten that tusk length as much as possible so that she didn't have to worry nearly as much. I'm going to just reposition us because they're kind of walking away from us and into the light, and so it's not very pleasant. And so I'm going to just get us into a slightly better kind of position up ahead of them and have them kind of walk towards us again. Often with ellies, if you just position yourself kind of just to the side and above where they're walking, give them the option of whether they want to come towards you or just kind of goes past you. Generally with Fang's herd though, she's not too stressed. She'll kind of walk right towards us. Sorry, Chandra, that's a big stump that's behind us, so we're going to have to just do a little turn. But how cool is that we've got to see her again? Now this herd at the moment is probably a good 30 elephants that are in her grouping. We did once count and it was over 40, but sometimes you get a bit of a split, and it doesn't look like as many ellies are here today than what we sometimes do get. Oh, come on, Rusty. Rusty's reverse gear is not in good condition at the moment. I don't know what's happened to it. It seems as though it's unfortunately taken a bit of a pounding, but that's okay. We'll get Opar to look at it, the magician, with our vehicles and try and figure things out. But here we go. So I'm going to try and punch through this gap towards this mound, because often what will happen is that ellies will go up on mounds to feed, and it's really cool when you get an ellie right on the top of a mound, especially this one that's here. Now, sorry, Kirst, you really did break up badly. Can you just repeat that question? I mean, the person's name. I got the question, but I didn't get the name. Chandra, did you copy that? No, me neither. I'm sorry, Kirst. I'll answer the question. I don't have the name, but I'll answer the sort of question. No, I've forgotten the question now too. I was too busy concentrating on the name that I've kind of forgotten what we were trying to say as well. But honestly, our comms have gone and I can't really hear anything. So you're going to have to just bear with us for a little bit. We're still trying to figure out quite a bit of what's going on with the move to Johannesburg. And so every now and then it's going to be a few little technical hitches that we need to get going. And considering we kind of upped and rooted our whole system and moved it there, it's pretty impressive that it's worked as well as it has. She's so pretty. And you can see that big tusk with all the mud kind of sprayed over it. Now, I remembered the question. It's about the elephant with the dodgy ear, whether or not it's able to flap its ear. So it seems like it can still flap the ear, whether the ear is causing any issues and it's overheating a little bit because the backside of the ear is facing the sun. It's actually straight through here, Chandra. If you can... Oh, now this one has walked in the way, but it's the one behind this one. over there at the back. Of course, this one would walk right in the way. Off you go. Right, so that's the elephant in question. So when it flaps its ears, I mean, every now and then you'll see the ear come out, and the right ears are definitely going to be working harder. But I wonder if it overheats a little bit more with that left ear kind of exposed like that. And I wonder also if the skin is thickening on that ear in order to protect those veins a little bit more. Of course, we've just got one Ellie who's like, no, I want to be the center of attention. You can't look at that one that has got the folded ear. It's me or nobody. And so it's kind of just come right in front of us. Yes, hello, you naughty boy. You're going to be a big boy eventually, though. You've got beautiful tusks already for such a young lad. And you can see the female in the background just warned him and said, my baby's here. You stay where you are. You're not welcome to get so close to my baby. You see that? You see how she's just kind of coming and sort of getting between the baby and him and saying, off you go. You're not welcome here. This is not where you're allowed to feed. My baby is too close. And you can see that he's now right here. And our friend with the broken ear is also coming to say hello. Isn't this just insane? This is why I love Fang's herd, because they are so chilled and they're so kind of used to the cars and they don't really worry too much about anything. But its skin does look as though it's a little bit thicker on the back end. It would be interesting. I'm pretty sure that there would be some thickening of that skin just to try and help with the temperature control. But you can see still flaps forward and still healthy individuals, not in any way damaged. And I think it's one of Fang's offspring, because wherever she goes, it follows very, very close by. So I think that's one of the offspring she's had in the past that generally is close to her, because that's her on the left and kind of standing in her shadow at the moment. But how I've missed big herds of elephants feeding all around the car. It really is the most special thing. And I'm actually just going to keep quiet for a bit so you can hear them feeding on the grass, particularly the one to our left. She's kind of sitting and feeding with a little baby between her legs, and it's amazing to hear her tearing that grass. Cool. Can you hear how that all is being ripped up? Amazing. And you can see her little baby still fits right underneath her. Shame, little one. Did you just get pushed along by Mom? This is so cool. Now, I want you to take a look at how the whole herd stops and feeds and doesn't move, but now that Fang starts to move, the rest of the grouping starts to push on a little bit ahead again. So she kind of dictates a lot of the flow of what goes on within this herd and what they kind of get up to, and how they kind of move. Now, I'm going to send you across to somebody. I'm not sure whether it's Pat, Jamie, or James, but either way, all of them are, I'm sure, people that you would want to see, and so I'm sure they'll be interesting.
It's me, surprise, it's me, because I haven't finished answering the question about Mapocho genes. But before we go into that, I'm very happy for Tristan that he got to see Fang. I love that elephant herd. It's a there's something really special about that herd. I suppose just because they're so relaxed and we've had so many special moments with them. But they are a firm favorite in the Safari Live family. Now, I've left the Avoca males, as you can tell. You know, there's one missing, so I thought maybe we could go look around Buffelshoek Dam and we might find the Avoca male, and we might find some Nkuhumas, or we might find the cheetah. Who knows? There's lots of things to find. And while we're looking there, we might also see some elephants swimming in the waterhole because it's nice and hot. So you just never know. Now, I was giving my answer to the question about the Mapocho and the Majingilan male lion gene pool. And, you know, the problem is that my next part of the answer was going to be, I'm not 100% sure. I know that the Mapochos and the Majingilans at one point covered an enormous amount of the Sabi Sand, but it was a little bit before my time working in this area. Now, if I had to guess, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer, if I had to guess, I would say a fair percentage of the lion prides that we see around here could have at least Mapocho genes. Not convinced about the Mingilan genes, but certainly the Mapojos moved in from the north. They were often seen on Juma in the early days. So the problem is I just don't know if any of the cubs survived from that period of time within this area. Obviously, Mapojos did have surviving cubs, but I don't know if, say, the Nkuhumas actually ended up having cubs with them, or if the Torchwood Pride did. I've got a funny feeling that the Sticks would have. Sticks at one point were a very, very large pride. I suspect that they would have. Certainly Mapocho genes. I'm open, though, to your answers as well. There are certain people who followed those lions in a much more geographical sense, with an idea of exactly where they moved, far more so than my relatively limited knowledge. So if you do know the answer, you can send that through to #SafariLive on Twitter. Whoopsie, bouncy. So while we wait for those answers to come through so I can then give you an entirely accurate answer, let us send you back across to James. It's all about lions this afternoon from the Jays. Let's go see what he has to say about the Sausage Tree Pride.
Chair once more. It's wonderful to be back in the red chair, and I'm astounded it hasn't been damaged. Now, Lawrence the lion is he's been looking at some tweets here on his telephone. It's a very modern day lion. You can see old Lawrence over there. And I thought I'd address three of them. Firstly, Beck saying the Eldonio pike males were dominant males over the Nasipa pride previously, and they were pushed away by 4 males who crossed from Tanzania. That's very interesting. Also known, of course, as the Ngiro males, or Ngiro Are males. Thank you very much for that. Debbie in Vancouver, you said it's fascinating that Kipuli walked in, beat the resident lions and took over the Sausage Tree territory, stayed a while, and then took the young males and disappeared. I think it is absolutely fascinating. I suspect what he did was he found, during the migration, an unoccupied area around the salt lick where there was a pride of females, and he decided he would head off that way. And then when he kind of thought about going back to the sausages, the Eldonio pikes were in the area, and he thought, it's nice by the sausage tree, at least by the salt lick, and those lionesses are just fine. So I think that's what's happened there. Then, a nice question from Lindsay Martin, who wants to know about the tracking shot that we managed to get with this lion. I say we, I mean, I couldn't possibly get any credit or take any credit for this particular shot, but it's this shot here that we're looking at. And it's called a tracking shot because the camera is moving with the animal. And it's actually a beautiful shot. I forget exactly who took it. Like I said, it was Manu or Gendre. And what they did was, I'll play it for you once more, is they basically hung off the side of the car with the camera on the ground with it in slow-mo. And so if it was played in normal motion, it would be a bit jerky, but it's in slow-mo, and the car's just moving very slowly along with the animal. Watch it again. It is beautiful. Now, the reason we don't get more shots like this is, of course, that we're taking a game drive, which means that the camera is almost always going to be on the presenter or swinging off the presenter into the bush. And it's difficult to present when the cameraman is leaning over the car and, well, you might lose him. In some cases, that might not be a bad thing, but in most cases, that would be quite bad. Now, we're going to have a look at the Sausage Tree Pride and the Eldonio Payaks and what they got up to over the last week.
The Sausage Tree Pride continued their blissful existence down south in one of the most picturesque parts of the Mara. Perhaps the glorious sunsets, rolling eastern vistas, waving rich oat grass, and the mystical backdrop of the Olololo escarpment are what inspires the buffalo to remain in this area, despite the fact that the pride picks off one of their number on a weekly basis. It's difficult to imagine a more satisfied cat than this. Belly full, comfortable deck chair, cool breeze, and unsurpassed view. The dynamic between the Eldonio Payak males and the cubs continues to fascinate me. We're not actually sure if the 3 cubs are theirs or the last act of Kipuli before he departed. But this is not the first time the two big males have shown remarkable tolerance for the little ones. It would be really fascinating to conduct a paternity test on the cubs to find out if the Oldonyos, quite against accepted wisdom, are raising another male's offspring.
So I think that is just the most beautiful piece of ground I've possibly ever seen. Mountains, certainly my favourite. Wide open parkland, in other words, big clearings with some lovely trees sticking out of them, views of the sunset, food to eat, and gorgeous temperatures this week. So they really have picked themselves a fantastic spot to live. It's also, of course, very near some water. They've got that lovely Kampiamungu stream or brook or gully or whatever you like to call it. Everybody calls these little rivers different things out here. It's got water in it. It's just one of the most picturesque parts of an incredibly picturesque part of the world. And I think they've chosen very nicely there. That picture of the lioness sitting up in the tree, panting with her backside in the fork of the tree was just too priceless. I'm very pleased we got that. And I wonder if it is the lioness that we call miti, which of course means tree. That means tree in Swahili, if I'm not mistaken. Bulgaria does, yes. And also in Zulu, in South Africa. Miti means trees. Okay, righty. Let's go and see if Patrick Fitzgerald has managed to find a leopard, or some tracks, or maybe a swimming hyena.
This cat, man, my lord, he has given me the runaround. So, well, not just me, there are a couple of others also trying desperately to find the little chief, but I don't know where he is. We have been so close a couple of times. There's been a couple of times where I was certain that he was there. There has been tracks leading into riverbeds with squirrels calling. I was certain that we found him. It was a bird. It was just a bird that they were calling at. So now I'm going out a little bit wider. I was doing a pretty narrow search because I didn't think he was going to move far. It's a pretty warm day today. So yeah, I'm just going to go a bit wider now and see what I can find. In the meantime, let's have a look at another interaction between hyena and leopard that happened last week. Hosanna, happy as he found himself a suitable breakfast, was once again interrupted by an equally hungry hyena, both spotted and partial to stealing each other's snacks. The little chief took the high road, walking off his frustrations and taking the time to reflect. However, the impatience of his youth and growing hunger pains drove him back to the carcass, only to be bested once again. Hosanna's resilience remains admirable, if not sometimes foolish, as he continues to go toe-to-toe with his resident scavenging foes. Hosanna, you cheeky boy. I don't actually think this is a complete joke, but I feel like sometimes he actually just knows where the camera is. Sometimes he feels like coming out for it and sometimes he doesn't. And for some reason, when he'll be in a spot where everyone can see him, he's in a nice, easy location, you know you're going to go there and find him for about 1, sometimes 2 days. And I swear as soon as it's my turn to go find him, he decides to move. But we love him. We love Hosanna. And I am determined to show him all to you because I know that you all love seeing him just as much as I do. If not more, maybe. We'll compete for it. Ooh, something interesting has happened up in the Mara. James Hendry, who is currently inside, has managed to find an animal.
Something very interesting has happened up here in the Mara, everybody. We have found a mouse bird, a speckled mouse bird. Isaac, who is in here watching this sort of, studio session, they said to me, do birds ever fly into the windows? I said, no, not often. They come and they sit on this windowsill, with which it went into this window and fell down the other side, and he went and fetched it for us. So here it is, a speckled mouse bird, and not one of our characters that we see regularly, nothing to do with the sausage tree pride or any of the cats that we find out here, but it's not often that we have a bird in hand, and so we thought we'd show it to you. Isn't that beautiful? We could make it a character, Kirsten, except then we'd have to capture it and keep it in here, which I don't think would be very kind. He looks a little bit like he wants to go away now, and so we're going to take him outside and release him. Yes. Ooh, there we go. Right, well, he might actually just stay. He's now sitting on a power cable. I shouldn't have really let him go there, and he's also made a large dump on the carpet, which is unfortunate. Right, we're now going to have to try and get the mouse bird out of here while you go back to Tristan and the elephants.
Well, James, good luck with that. That studio is always in an area that's got lots of birds, and getting one out of the studio is not going to be as easy as getting it in there, that's for sure. But there is cuteness overload right there. What is with all these young Ellies photobombing every frame we have? Jandre, your work's been cut out for you this afternoon. Ellies keep photobombing. Every time we try and look at an Ellie, another one just comes swinging past and blocks what we're trying to look at. But anyway, very, very cute little baby that's been playing with grass and having the best time walking around. I suppose in a herd like this, it must be fun to be a baby elephant, because there's lots of older siblings, and it's such a big herd that I don't think anything would really mess with them. But, oh, that's not bad. Trunk's got a bit of kind of purchase on that plant, and there goes another photo bomb. It's the other problem with a lot of Ellies, is that it's tricky to kind of not have Ellies just running through the frame or walking through the frame at various periods. Now you will notice, I think that poor Ellie must have had a bit of an accident during the course of today with its mother. And I say accident, and you might be thinking, what do you mean accident? Well, I think in all likelihood what's happened is that little one was walking behind mom. Hello. That's very cool. And I was probably walking behind mom, and mom looks like she may have defecated on that little one's head, because there's got a bit of a stain on the side of its head that looks very much like mom has gone to the toilet on her, which is not uncommon. It does happen quite regularly. And you'll find that they do get pooed on quite often, which is not a very pleasant experience. But there is something very, very, very special about sitting, I don't know, within 2-3 meters of a herd of Ellies and just having them kind of gently feed next to you. And there's not been a single moment with this herd where there's been any sort of aggression or signs that they're in distress with our presence. Most of the time I've parked quite far from them, and they've slowly but surely kind of filtered past us. And in fact, actually where we've driven, a lot of the time they've come with us as we've kind of been driving away from them, and they've just walked in that direction. So it's so special to be like this. It's one of those things that you can't really explain it. If you're somebody that enjoys being near elephants or seeing elephants, this is something that you'll absolutely love. I know a lot of people are quite scared of being close to Ellies like this, but as long as you pay attention to what the signs are and you watch the herd when you first approach, then generally you can be absolutely kind of fine with and they will be fine with you. And this particular herd is like that. Hello. I believe you guys can hear all the sounds of them. There's one that's feeding right in front of the car at the moment, and I'm going to keep quiet so you can continue to kind of hear what's going on. So there you go. How cool is that? It's always special when you can actually hear the footsteps, and when they pass gas as well. Sorry, Bob. It's just so funny that we've just asked you to listen, and then that one has just passed gas right as we've done that. So I'm pretty sure you guys caught that. But anyway, what set of teeth do I think Fang is currently on? In all likelihood, she's probably, given her body size, she's a massive female. That I would imagine that she would be on her sort of last set, maybe her fifth or sixth set would be my guess, but I think sixth set. Those are normally ones that kind of last quite long. In fact, actually, after last week, I went and thanks to those that kind of tagged me in some stuff. I know James Richard and Judy H, you guys tagged me in a few articles about teeth of elephants, and some of the sets of teeth, well, the fifth and sixth set almost last 20 to 25 years, which is, a very long set, a long time. So I'd imagine that's what she would be on. She would be on probably her last set, given her size and her bulk. But that's okay. I mean, she's still in fine fettle. She doesn't look as though she's in any way kind of looking weak, or her muscular structure looks And now? Who's whinging? One of the babies that is whinging. It's not the one that's closest to us. That one is still trying to figure things out. There's a little temper tantrum. I suppose if maybe is that one in the background. Yes, that's the one that's complaining. Oh, you're not getting milk, little one. Shame. Look at that little trunk. Isn't that cute? I wonder which one is the one that Jamie saw falling down the slope, because that was also Fang's herd, and there was a tiny little one, but that would be about 2 years old now, so we need to look out for that little elephant. There was one that kind of went bumbling down the slope and had a little tumble, and Jamie, shame. It was a very, very, very sweet sighting, that, and eventually got helped up onto its feet. At that stage, it was absolutely tiny, that little one. It was barely able to even walk. What's interesting with this grouping and kind of sitting here is that they've walked kind of from the termite mound that you might see in the distance there. There's a little termite mound just to the right of those guys in the background there. And they walked to this termite mound. They've now gotten to this termite mound and they've just kind of fed around it. But everybody's now facing back the way that they've just come from. So they kind of walked to here, ate all around us, and now they're slowly starting to edge their way kind of back in the direction that we started, and kind of feeding their way back towards that mound, which is odd. Generally, eddies, when they pick up a direction, typically stick to it. They like to kind of walk along. But what you might find is there was a certain something that they wanted to eat here. There's a few sicklebush that are around, and eddies love sicklebush. They'll eat quite a bit of it. And in this northern sector that we're in, not nearly as much sicklebush as what you'd find in other parts of the Sabi Sands. And so maybe that's what they're targeting. It looks like they're eating mostly grass, though. I'm just kind of looking around, and not one of them is really feeding on a tree. Everybody is into really nice, tasty grasses that are coming up from the ground. They must be in heaven when it's like this after a bit of rain, where there's so much kind of green grass for them. It's just, I suppose a massive buffet of food. Just that one is cute. Now you can see, look at the little poo stain on its cheek and its ear. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Sorry, little one. I'm afraid, either that or it rolled in it, which also does happen sometimes. Now, sorry, Kirst, I missed the name there. You're going to have to... I Love Me Alone. Thank you, Jeandre. Jeandre heard it. I Love Me Alone. If a baby was abandoned by the mother, what would happen to the little one? And so, unfortunately, with elephant moms, as much as they're a tight-knit family unit as a herd, they're actually quite tricky when it comes to their babies. They won't actually allo-suckle, so they won't adopt a baby and suckle it. If it's old enough that it doesn't need to be suckled and it can move and keep up with the herd, then it's welcome to stay in the herd, and you'll often find that it will. But if it's still tiny and it needs milk, unfortunately, the herd eventually at some point will just abandon it and move off, which I know sounds terrible, but that's just the way Ellies are. They deem that to be this most successful way for them, and so much energy goes into looking after their own young and being defensive of that they don't really have the resources or the time to now take on another one. And so you'll find, unfortunately, if little ones get orphaned when they're very small, that they end up being abandoned or dying. It takes a while, but it does happen. But if they're big enough and they can move and they're teenagers, then, well, they are happily within the herd and they don't get abandoned. If they're young males, obviously they'll be pushed out eventually, but young females often stay within the herd and will kind of grow up and just sort of have their own little ones once they reach sexual maturity. But if they're small, unfortunately not. Right. We are going to just kind of move and try and just get into a better spot with our Ellies once again. In the meantime, though, let's send you back across to Jamie, who's going to, well, delve into the cheetah cubs that came all the way up from the north.
We are meandering back in the direction of those lions, so it's getting a little bit cooler, which means that we can spend a bit of time with them as they are more likely to be a bit more active. But just quickly, thank you to Beck, who let me know that the Ottawa Pride still have surviving Mapocho gene lions, as do a fair amount, thanks to Joshua. They also have Majingi lion genes. Now that means very little to a lot of people who haven't followed each and every single lion pride of the Sands. But apparently, yeah, the Ottawas, the Solalas. I can't believe I forgot to mention the Solalas. It's a pride of lions that we saw twice on drive. We saw the Solalas, and it was a very shame. I'm actually quite sad about that lioness without the tail. She died. Gosh, when did she die? I'm just going to quickly stop and look at these kudu because they've started to give birth. I just want to double check and see if there's a little baby wandering around. There's a very pregnant female there, Craig, on the right, the one that we can see clearly. Sure. Oh, you never know, Kirst. You just never know. We're long overdue for a live kudu birth. And by that I mean we've never had one. It would be wonderful. Is that belly moving or is it just me? Is she just breathing? Oh no, she's ruminating. It was just her belly actually contracting to ruminate. That's what that was. Any little babies? I don't see any tiny babies. Tristan saw one for the first time yesterday, day before yesterday. And I saw screenshots of it and it was absolutely, utterly beguiling with those enormous ears. It would be lovely to see one. No, doesn't look like it. Alrighty, well, speaking of motherhood, of course, being a mom, and this discussion has travelled all the way across from James and the Mara to with Tristan and the Ellies, and of course with us talking about Nkuhuma cubs and bloodlines. We've been talking a lot about the role that mothers play within the lives of little animals and how they feel and the bond between mother and offspring. Of course, we have quite a sad tale from this week, and that is that for the very first time, we saw the thorny bush subadults without their mother.
Seeing Cheetah and Juma is always an unexpected but welcomed treat. It was a relief to see the two thorny bush cheetah siblings scouring their surroundings. We saw their mother with them towards the end of last year, but now she was notably absent. Cheetah are slender by nature, but the male and female subadults were particularly thin this afternoon. They spent some time resting up in the shade and recovering some of their energy, and once the sun began to set and the heat softened, they headed out once more in the hopes of something to satisfy their hunger.
I was in such Mara mode when I first saw those two cheetah, when Craig was the one who spotted them, actually, well done Craig, when I first saw them, that I went into Malika and Naratoy mode and was talking about them being two boys. But of course it is a male and a female cub, which means that life is going to be tough for them because they're not naturally, they will stay together, and they're going to stay together, I suspect, for probably at least another 6 months or so. They were around about 16 months old, so that is really, really early for them to be without their mother, and it's going to be challenging for them to learn to hunt and of course to be aware constantly of the risks around them. The mothers of young animals, wild animals out here, do so much more than just food provision. They're constantly aware, they're constantly teaching their cubs life lessons, and of course in the case of cheetah, often actively providing them with an opportunity to learn to hunt. It's one of those really sad things to witness in nature. We've seen Malika do it with her sons before, where basically the female cheetah catches the prey and then allows the cubs to, once she's certain that it can't get away, to actually play with it and chase it around. Very unpleasant to witness, but a very important part of their learning process, and it's something that those poor cubs have largely skipped without her. Now, they've definitely clearly been surviving for a while, probably on small kills. They don't have the leopard jaw strength. Remember when Hosanna and Shungile were on their own, how they survived, and Vutomi actually. They survived largely on terrapins and tortoises. At one memorable occasion, a monitor lizard. But cheetah don't really have that strength or that jaw strength to make use of slow-moving prey like that. So they're going to have to find other strategies in order to stay alive. And then, of course, if they do survive the next 6 or 7 months, then it will come time to split up. If it were 2 male cubs, they would stay together, but because it's a male and a female, they will be out on their own, going their separate ways. I hope we get to catch up with them again soon, though. The last I heard, they were moving south, so I hope they do make a reappearance. Perhaps they'll decide to come and call Juma home. Although, ideally, far away from the Nkuhumas, the Avocas, whatever other big cats and hyenas decide to wander around. I have a slight, vague concern that I might have lost communication with Final Control in Johannesburg again. Nope. There we go. Hello. Hello, Kirst. Nope, all is good. All is fine, all is well. And we are nearly back at the lions. Hello to Lily, who is 7 years old. Now, Lily wants to know if Juma is now part of the cheetah's home range or territory. Lily, it's good to hear your name. I'm glad that you're watching today. Lily, I don't think they really have a home range or a territory just yet. It's a place that they know because this is a place that their mum has taken them to see, but they haven't established themselves here properly. So it's not really part of their home range or their territory yet. I think it's only when they're a little bit older that they might be ready to start defending an area like this. Now, for the female cheetah, for the female cub, she'll never really have a territory, but she will have a home range. And I think that there's a good chance that she's going to stay close to the areas that she knows, that she spent time in with her as when she was tiny, and that her mother showed her and where to go and what to do. So I think there's a good chance that that may happen. And we may get lucky that sometimes we see them come and visit us every now and again. Because, of course, cheetah cover huge distances. So it won't be all the time. Now, as we make our way back towards those lions, they do look as though they could use a jolly good meal. Perhaps something similar to the buffalo that Pat's just found.
Well, no Hosanna yet, but we do have a group of Duggar boys. It's something that Hosanna definitely wouldn't be able to take down on his lonesome, but would probably love to come across perhaps a half-eaten carcass of to scavenge. But they're big size, these Duggar boys. Probably about, they can come in at 600 to 700 kgs, which is about just under 2,000 pounds. So very heavy animal, well, not just under, but about 1,600 pounds. And Hosanna, well, he's probably about 60, 65, maybe 70 kilos in that sort of range. So about just under 150 pounds there. But these are Duggar boys, as I said, and what that means is that they are a group of buffalo that have left the herd. They have had enough in their old age. They're just older buffalo, older males, should I say, that have gone either into a bachelor herd or solitary. And just before it flies off as well, to our left here, we have a woodland kingfisher sitting very close to us. What a lovely little sighting. I just saw it about 5 minutes ago go down and give itself a nice little splash in the water, and is now sitting up there. It was airing its wings out for a while, had a little clean, and now is, looks like it's seen something in the water. There is quite a few insects down there. Of course, being related to the Australian kookaburra, I know those birds very well, and there is a striking resemblance between the two. The kingfishers are a lot smaller, but the beak shape, that stripe on the eye, and even their body form is very similar to that of a kookaburra. It looks like these buffalo back down here in the water. Looks like they've got a few oxpeckers of it. Nina, they are a pretty bird. I love the woodland kingfisher. They are great. But yes, we can see some oxpeckers sitting there on the back. Now, they are a bird that you will often see on animals such as the buffalo and maybe even occasionally a rhino or a hippo. And what they are doing is seeking out either ticks, blood, earwax or snot off of the buffalo to consume in their own diet. Now, people are sitting on the fence. There's a bit of an argument as to whether these oxpeckers are actually doing the animal any good or any harm, because they do remove ticks, and obviously ticks are a parasite. They're not what a buffalo wants on them. But apparently, I have read in a scientific paper that did a study, it wasn't on buffalo exactly, it was on cows or cattle, where they did a few exclusion experiments with oxpeckers and ticks, and the general conclusion is that they only remove the ticks so they can get to the wound underneath, the little hole that the tick has created. Then they can slowly open that up and start feeding on the blood. So while this may have some effect on tick load, it's actually maybe affecting the buffalo or the animal that it's on more. Now, I'm not fully convinced by this argument yet. This was just one paper, but there was a little bit of a debate about it as well. So, I suppose, as in science, more study, and more study. Well, we're going to leave these guys to peacefully have a wallow free of any lions. But I think James up in the Mara would like to speak to you about them.
Now, I am just putting Lawrence away to sleep. He hasn't had a dust for some time, of course. You know, a lot of my friends over here have been very lonely while I've been away. Nobody pays him much attention anymore. Anyway, Lawrence has now had his bath. Lawrence, you may now go back to your home, top here. We are now going to have a look at the Olololo pride. And the Olololo pride has just begat themselves three tiny little cubs. They are probably now round about 3, maybe 4 weeks old, and they are, as to be expected, utterly adorable.
The 3 new Olololo cubs provided the pride's main entertainment value over the last week. The little things are around 3 to 4 weeks old now, and just beginning to explore the wonders of their Mara home. As with all baby mammals, their callow antics indicate a blissful ignorance of the manifold Mara threats they must face on the treacherous path to lion adulthood. For now, their biggest challenge is deciding how to negotiate the slopes of the gully around their den site. It's a perfect place for baby lions, with lots of safe places to hide and an endless network of paths and ramps to play on. Always under mother's watchful gaze, of course. Normally, cubs meet the rest of the pride at around 4 to 6 weeks. But because this den is in an area that the pride gathers most frequently, the newest lions have already met many of the other Olololos. Mum looks hungry, very hungry, and her forays to find the rest of the pride over the course of the week have not yielded anything in the way of a meal.
Now, for me, the most interesting side of that Olololo Pride story is that just probably 300 or 400 meters away is a hyena den with two little cubs which must be about the same age. And it really is going to be interesting watching the fates of the two different cubs, or two different sets of cubs, growing up. I think that's marvellous. I don't know who it was that stuck two lion claws on the top of this old gentleman's head, but I quite like the effect. And so I think we'll leave him as it is. I'm going to suspect Brent Leo Smith, or perhaps Tristan Dix. I don't know who made a devil Maasai there. Anyway, the Olololo Pride we don't spend as much time with because they are unfortunately not in a off-road driving area, which means that we lose them and we go and look somewhere else. We'd almost certainly focus on them as a big character if we could see them more often. Many of you oohing and ahhing over the fact that we have such cute little cubs just on our doorstep. They are so oohable and ahhable, as are the hyena cubs. And as I've said to you all before, it is my firm belief that a lion cub is the cutest thing in the wilderness. Some of you wondering also whether or not the mouse bird disappeared and escaped. Escape would be a strong term. Harassed out of the room would be more accurate. Yes, Isaac found a long stick and managed to encourage the bird until it left, and it has now flown off to join its friends, and it has left no further defecation in my studio. Good. Okay. Right. Well, that's all I have to tell you about the Olololo Pride. And so what I think we'll do now is go back to Jamie, who has very patiently gone back to the lions, which are almost universally asleep.
Okay, from the lions with more O's in their names than anything else, we are now back with the Avoca males, who have, what, more O's than A's? No, more A's than O's. You know what I mean. You know where I was going with that. So we have arrived back with them on the hope that perhaps they were going to start moving about at this point. Well, they have moved, clearly, because now they're together again. They are hungry, sure. The more I look at this one here, closest to us, the more I can see. Could really do with a good meal. Definitely looking thin. His belly's drooping right down. His pelvis is sticking out a little bit as well. Lions often look a lot flatter than they actually are when they lie like this on their sides, though. But that is quite prominent. I suppose it's been quite a hard few weeks for them, and the Nkahuma ladies. It's been, you know, when they do find a female in estrus, they are not likely to eat for around about 5 days, possibly even longer. They've also got to expend a great deal of energy. And because the females are not falling pregnant yet, they're having to repeat that process often, which is often what happens to males that have just established themselves in a territory. So it is quite demanding, this process for them. They've got to regularly patrol. Their instincts are telling them to keep track of their boundaries and to roar and to make sure that there are no other males and that they're very clearly established, and they've got to mate with the females. Plus, there's the additional stress burden of the fact that the females don't really like them very much. Not yet, anyway. It'll come. The tolerance and respect will come from the females, but it will take some time and probably won't happen until the lionesses have cubs. Yes, Paula, I have seen overweight lions and leopards. I've seen them in captivity, and it's an incredibly depressing thing to see. I've also seen an obese tiger once, driving through past a place that I probably can't name for legal purposes, but is not far from Johannesburg itself. Driving past, they had some enclosures close to the road, and I saw a tiger that I cannot... Oh, it was terrible to see. I mean, that poor thing was so overweight. I've also seen some incredibly overweight wild dogs, which is hard to imagine and very depressing to actually witness. So yes, I have, but only ever in captivity, When it comes to wildcats... Oh, hold on one. Oh, I thought he was looking for me. It wasn't me that he was calling. Sorry, Game Drive Radio. When it comes to wildcats, I have seen very full lions and leopards. I have never seen overweight ones. Now, we often joke and say, look at how fat Hosanna is today. He's got such a big belly. But that's usually gone in the space of 2 days, and he's back to his slender self. So in the natural wild situation, no, I have never seen a fat lion. I've even seen hyenas that look astoundingly full. I'm not too worried about him yet. He could use a good meal. But this male lion, I think a lot of you are feeling a bit worried about him. He'll be fine. They'll catch something to eat shortly, or they'll find one of the prides on a kill, and he'll go and join them. I think he'll be all right. He's thin, though. Surprisingly thin. Too thin for just the rigors of everyday male lion life. I wonder if this is the one with the limp. I can't tell. I haven't seen him properly. I haven't been able to look at him properly, and I don't know them well enough yet to be certain. I still haven't seen all 3 of them together. That's something that I'm looking forward to. All 3 Avocas roaring right in the middle of quarantine clearings. It takes me right back to the Birmingham males, where we had all 5 of them. In 2015. First, one of them was mating with amber eyes at the dam wall, and then we drove out that night and they were all roaring right next to the vehicle. And nothing quite like that feeling and that sound. I would say to you, I hope they roar before the end of the safari lives, but I think we all know that that is relatively unlikely. Linda, stay awake. Stay awake, Linda. Linda says that these lions are making her sleepy watching them. I completely concur, especially now that the temperature's dropped slightly. When Craig and I were sitting here, we were sitting right in the sun without any shade, which is one of the reasons why we actually left and went for a little bit of a drive before coming back. But now that the temperature's dropped off, I feel like I could too. I could just nod off quietly, watching them. There is actually more movement to the grass and the trees around them than there is from the lions themselves. Well, it's nice at the top. It's good to be at the top of the predator hierarchy. There's no other males around. They can rest easy. Nothing, bar an elephant or one very grumpy buffalo. Absolutely nothing is going to bother them. I'm absolutely convinced in my own mind that nothing can look as comfortable as a male lion. James is doing his best to imitate them. Let's go find out if he looks just as comfy as they do.
And she was wrong. I am definitely more comfortable than that lion. I do not have things sticking into my body. I have the comfort of this sofa. I do have the fairly strident, ordering voice of Kirsten McClellan-Smith in my ear, of course, but right now she's not speaking. Good. Now, we're sort of coming to the end of the show now, and I suppose I just wanted to use the whole of this marvellous space once more, and so we'll probably end the show back up on the swing, I think. Yes. A really astounding kind of amount of interesting dynamic going on here at the moment in the Mara. Belinda, you say you want me to read you a bedtime story? Well, I suppose I could. I mean, I'm not very good at reading bedtime stories, but I could give it a go. Now, so wonderful stuff going on over here with the Sausage Tree Pride. Unconfirmed paternity of those cubs. New cubs on the way. Very exciting. Tundi and Kalamba, who knows what's going to happen with them? Who knows how long Kalamba's going to be around? She must be fairly shortly going to try and wedge her way in between her mother and her sister. Hosanna, long may he remain in his father's territory, and I hope that we will see Tingana again this week. I haven't seen him obviously for some weeks now, and it'll be very good to catch up with him again. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. Thank you for making Safari Lives the show it is. I really enjoy it. It's certainly my favourite afternoon of the week, and I hope for some of you it is too. Thank you for your questions and comments. We will see you tomorrow as normal at 0500 in South Africa. Until then, stay safe. Bye-bye.